Welcome back to Storytime with Dana. This is the book we're going to do. Some of you may have this book at home. It's called The Giving Tree, and it is by Shel Silverstein. And it's such a great book. I loved this book when I was a kid. I loved it. Once there was a tree. And she loved a little boy. I am too big to climb and play, said the boy. I want to buy things and have fun. I want some money. Can you give me some money? I'm sorry, said the tree, but I have no money. I have only leaves and apples. Take my apples, boy, and sell them in the city. Then you will have money, and you will be happy. I have no house, said the tree. The forest is my house. But you may cut off my branches and build a house. Then you will be happy. Cut down my trunk and make a boat, said the tree. Then you can sail away and be happy. My branches are gone, said the tree. You cannot swing on them. I am too old to swing on branches anyway, said the boy. My trunk is gone, said the tree. You cannot climb. I am too tired to climb, said the boy. I am so sorry, said the tree. I wish that I could give you something, but I have nothing left. I am just an old stump. I am sorry. I don't need very much now, said the boy. Just a quiet place to sit and rest. I am very tired. Well, said the tree, straightening herself up as much as she could. Well, an old stump is good for sitting and resting. Come, boy, sit down and rest. And the boy did. See, he's sitting. And the tree was happy. The end. So isn't that a nice story about love and friendship and sharing and also preservation? It's okay. It's called The Giving Tree. I hope you enjoyed that. Give your parents a little bit of a break. Hope you're going to be good the rest of the day. And I can't wait to see you again tomorrow. Bye-bye. All done? Okay.
What happened to the background?
Oh, I don't know.
The boats went away.
I don't know. It looks very cosmic, though.
Yeah.
Isn't that a nice story about love and friendship and sharing? Conservation? Is it? Is it though? Shel Silverstein. I remember being read his poems when I was a kid in bed. Right? Just family-friendly, fun, silly rhymes, right? Whereas a story like The Giving Tree, really a rather horrific, postmodern type of psychological conditioning of children. You know, The Giving Tree, which, by the way, Silverstein wrote in 1963, I believe, when in the late 50s and 60s, he was also traveling the world as a staff cartoonist for Playboy magazine, so Yeah, definitely a guy really coming from a God-fearing view of the world. No. Definitely not. But it's a cartoon, and it's fun, and it's nice, and they're friends, and, he carves a thing in a tree. But when I was listening to this the other day, don't ask me how I came across it, but story time with Dana, right? All the kids are home. We gotta give them stuff to do to give mom and dad a break. Story time. And it just encapsulates so much. The more I thought about this whole giving tree screwed up metaphor of a story that... So what are kids really supposed to take away from that at the end? Other than you killed the earth, the only friend who really loved you, and instead of playing in her branches, you wanted to go spend your time, having a family and being industrious in some capacity, and you wanted money so you could be happy, and you wanted to be able to travel and all these things. And so by the end, he's just a rickety old man sitting on a stump, and they're together again, in there at the bitter end. You plundered the earth, and she just gave and gave, and you took and took, and now here you are, a man at the end of his life, and a dead stump. And then what happens, Dana? Well, yeah, the man's going to die, go into the ground. So are you supposed to feel guilty for eating apples and building houses and going on boats? Participating in the world? I mean, the irony of this story, of this poor tree who loved him so much, and in the end she's just reduced to a stump because of all of his selfish human industriousness and desire for money. And yet Silverstein, when he died, he was worth like $20 million, and it's not bad for an author. He was not poor. A millionaire from selling books made from paper taken from trees. But that's just it. It's a perfect snapshot of the whole conundrum, the whole problem when you take God out of the picture and you start trying to think about nature and humanity and our relationship, to the earth. Pretty much every lie that Satan has convinced the world is true because it's what they want to hear. They want to hear every type of explanation of origins and destiny of humanity that's absent of God. And so now here we are, where so many people, I think, are increasingly both being programmed deeper and psychologically conditioned to obey and give up freedoms that was unthinkable even just a few weeks ago. But it's all firing off of all these things that we've been conditioned to believe and conditioned to use and accept as normal. But yeah, then this whole shift where suddenly now millions of all the schools are closed, and so all the kids are at home and doing school online and watching story time with Dana, although I doubt many are even watching. But yeah, it reminded me of this old clip that I think I used a while back. Specifically this one part because of cosmology propaganda connections. But when you watch the whole thing, it's called The Year 1999 AD. It was made in the 60s, I think like 65 or something. And it's amazing because the whole thing is like 25 minutes long, and it's, this corporate funded propaganda film by Philco Ford Corporation, or partnership between them or whatever. Whatever Philco is, I don't even know. Ford, everybody knows. But, yeah, the whole thing is like in the future, in the distant future of 99, where basically they show everything from, internet shopping to AI regulated meals and budgets. And, this is all before the silicon revolution, right? The transistor, silicon transistor. So it's being imagined in the context of switchboards and, pre-silicon computer technology. But it's all the same concepts, like all these futuristic notions of, I'll just press a button and get menu options, and then I'll just press another button and go to the kitchen, and these rectangular processed meals will slide out of a conveyor belt microwave, and I'll serve it up with a vase of flowers to my family. And everybody has all this leisure time, and they're just living this Ken and Barbie dollhouse Jetsons, fantasy. The whole thing it's kind of hilarious, but I think also it's quite sobering and useful, I would say, is kind of like a tool to look at this. On the one hand, you can see how silly it all is, but then how much of it has actually now come to be, and yet the realities of how having all these luxuries and this, computer-connected home and life has involved things that were never in the commercial. They were not in the brochure, Surprise, surprise. Because in this little film, 1999 AD, they don't show you factories on the other side of the ocean where in a communist country they're building everything that goes into your technologically liberated life, where you live by the beach and in your spare time work on genetic engineering of new plant species. And my favorite part is at the end where they're at this like cocktail party, and it's, all these couples are mingling, and you overhear all their conversations about, oh, how was Paris, Bob? Oh yeah, just got back from Tokyo and going down to Buenos Aires next week, or so it's like everyone's just these independently wealthy. It's this whole dream of being, having all this freedom and economic independence, and we can just zip around the world so easily now, and it's this beautiful, free and open society all across the world, and we're all interconnected, and look, I took this video of a singer down in Latin America. Let me get you a dupe. I'll send it to you, Bob. It's great. Because, how has the real 1999 played out versus the 1960s brochure? In so many ways, the technology has surpassed what they could even imagine even then, in terms of the amount of data, and having a personal device that tracks you wherever you go and collects all this metadata about everything. And, there's this rose-colored, naive vision of the internet-connected home, and we're just frolicking on the beach, right? And the crazy thing is that kind of represents, like, this is what we've really been as we progressed from the 60s through the 70s and 80s and all the way to, the post-9/11 world, and then now today, where as these things became more and more reality, this is still kind of the absurd utopian vision that almost everyone has held onto to some degree or another. And now when it reaches this scarier point than it's ever been, where it's like, oh yeah, corporatism. Corporations are not always your friend. And politicians lie. And drug companies don't love you. You don't even have to get into super conspiratorial territory to show folks that much. Corruption's real. That's this whole thing about communist China being the epicenter of the outbreak, right? It's pretty interesting because it just kind of brings right to the forefront this whole paradoxical reality being shoved in everyone's face. So it's like, yeah, well, we've been frolicking on our beaches and wanting to live the American dream, whatever that means to whoever. Yeah, all our freedom-loving American corporations have been offshoring jobs to all sorts of countries. The biggest one being a communist country, doing horrific, totalitarian, authoritarian things in all kinds of ways, and that stuff is not a secret. I mean, if they're actually even acknowledging it on our own mainstream news, it's pretty out in the open. So you believe that, like, people in power who consolidate power through a false promise of socialist utopias, that they actually might lie and just want to use that power to make themselves wealthy and more powerful? People in America, like, they get all that when it comes to communism, when it's labeled communism. But corporatism, man, it's like, oh, brought to you by your good friends at Ford. Your good friend, even now, it's everywhere. Like, how many emails and how many commercials have you seen from every corporation that you've done business with, and telling you how they're going to help you out in this time, and they just really care about their customers, and it's all part of this we're in this together, hunker down campaign, right? But yeah, the corporations are your friends. And the communists are not, but we do business with them. We're completely dependent on them. Oh yeah, supply chain. What's that? Oh yeah, all these cargo containers that we unload off the docks every day from China. And so much more. But it just as one example, this whole relationship that has existed ever since, the the WTO kind of stuff took off. It's been going on for years. This constantly increasing network of corporations and governments and non-government organizations, this whole tree of distribution and consolidation and governance, right? Not government, governance. This corporate takeover of the world that always loves you. And, it's like people in the West and in quote-unquote democratic societies, they shake their heads at people who believe the lies of communist propaganda. How foolish can you be? We love our freedom too much for that. We would never fall for that. And it's like, yeah, I mean, here we are right now where Bill Gates and Elon Musk, all these guys that are coming to the rescue to people are like, yeah, and it's the same old, it's straight out of Annie. Little Orphan Annie. I love you, Daddy Warbucks. He's gonna come save the day. I'm gonna talk about a cartoon, a really subversive, wicked, screwed up form of propaganda. Psychological conditioning. Daddy Warbucks. Don't worry, the banks are going to flood us with more hollow greenbacks and infuse all this liquidity and bailouts. The whole economic thing it's almost too big to put into words. Because, yeah, there's been quite an implosion already, but I think they're using this stage to only inflate the bubble as big as they possibly can. They're adding more dynamite right now with all these stimulus bills and, unlimited quantitative easing. Yeah, it's like you just hit the infinity button on fiat currency until, like, at what point is it just going to, where the dollar just deflates, then you have to reset, actually, the whole monetary system. This whole black swan event. It's crazy to even hear that term being used in the mainstream media, like, constantly. This black swan event. Crisis that's actually a huge opportunity. But so many people are seeing all this develop, and it's getting very real for them. And they're thinking about, what do we do? And, like, very practical, present questions, right, that are extremely understandable. Because that's kind of the whole nature of this thing, is to bring us all back down to, we've been taking for granted all these rights to fly all over and travel and even, get in your car and just travel the country on the freeway. And we don't have checkpoints and we don't have all that draconian stuff. Right? This is America. But America's been mutating. America's been mutating for a long time into this corporatized technocracy. Since before any of us were born. For this crisis to even happen, for them to even be able to try and lock down all the mechanisms they have to lock down. It's taken a lot of industry, right? A lot of trees and apples and branches. And I think it's pushing people to a very real point of having to kind of stop and examine, like, how do we make sense out of all that? And human history and progress and technology, are we just here because there's some bad apples that happen to be the ones consolidating power who can't be trusted? If we got rid of them all tomorrow, like the Trump Q folks are still praying for, this house cleaning or whatever. I hate to tell you, but if you get rid of every single, New World Order billionaire tool and politician and technocrat in the world somehow, however you would even define that, as if it's all just this simplistic, rubber stamp thing, who's actually serving the New World Order? So we know who to get rid of. It doesn't work like that. Because as long as you're believing a story that doesn't involve God, then you're serving him one way or another. And you're subject to all the fear and these systems of control that Satan has built, which have to do with all the layers of distribution between the earth and the people. And that's why I think a lot of people know that this is a big deal when you just shut down actual real human activity, real human industry, where you're, cooking food and farming and building houses and all the things that humans actually do need to live, that all the funny money and the investors and stuff buy and sell and speculate on. There's no speculation if you don't have like a real tangible economy. We still have to get our food and our sustenance from the earth. And of course, we've industrialized it and scaled it up so much now. So, yeah, go ahead and get serious about backyard gardening and urban farming or off-grid things. I mean, that's all great. There's nothing wrong with it, but at some point you're going to realize that, like, the problem is bigger than just, it's like, did we just burn down the house to try and disinfect it? Or at least half the people's houses? They're already talking about this is bigger than the Great Depression, and yeah. It's not hard to see, like, the economic demolition job that this is in the NWO feeding frenzy. And yes, it's going to be cyclical and the new normal, and it's not just going to be a quick it's not going to be a quick death of freedom, right? All these stubborn people who still believe in freedom. But it brings it to a head, because it's like, why are we here? What is really the problem? Is cutting down trees evil? No. Is flying on a plane and going around the world or using this technology to communicate with people around the world inherently wrong? Well, no. In fact, God has used all this stuff to amazing degrees, and I know he will for however long. And I believe he will continue to do that until it's no longer time for it. But the reason why we're inevitably coming here and not the 1999 AD fantasy is because of the curse is real. The curse that every man, woman, and child, the curse of sin and ultimately death. And every single layer and angle of all this stuff going on that I've been thinking about and praying about and wrestling about and talking to people about, it all comes back to this at the end of it. And I've been under such conviction, because I've had to admit to myself that I still don't live every day and day by day thinking about this could be my last. I don't know. I don't even know that I will have it tomorrow. But am I thinking about eternity? And if your hope is in the resurrection because of your faith in Christ, then we are told that we are not supposed to fear death or nor worry about what we'll eat or drink or those things. And that's really the only hope, the only underlying hope that you can stand on that will see you through whatever trials of life you're going to go through, because everyone eventually is brought to that ultimate reality. Whether you live a nice long life and, a free and open society, or you happen to find yourself in an extremely tyrannical regime, of which there have been countless throughout history already. So there really is nothing new under the sun. But yeah, sooner or later it's going to crescendo, and so many things are crescendoing now. And so who knows how long all these preceding phases will take in the time frame and all that. But we know what will ultimately happen. That both the earth and the heavens will be shaken. And man, the more I think about this, about when your hope is in the resurrection and that all things are going to be made right again, and that all creation is going to be restored, and that in the city of God, the New Jerusalem, there will be the only perfect economy that has ever really existed. And I don't even know what that'll look like or how it'll work. I don't even know if we'll have jobs. I suppose we probably will. But there certainly will be no corporate control system, however it works. The whole thing is ruled by Jesus, the servant king, who became like us and lived as a man and got his hands dirty and worked as a carpenter, wandered the countryside and He could have come at any time in history, in any place, and yet he was talking to people about not storing up storehouses for the future if you don't even know if tomorrow is guaranteed. And again, it is kind of like this whole the giving tree thing, because you're left this giving tree mind job, right? Where it's like, are you happy, or do you feel guilty, or what? Because it's a combination of how much have we embraced these things and longed for these things and looked forward to the next model, the next stage, the next rollout, just onward and upward. From analog to digital, and LPs to cassettes to CDs to streaming, and now the guy who's helping save our country by mass producing ventilators, oh yeah, that's the same guy who wants to plug electrodes into everyone's brain and connect us all to the internet. I mean, that would be awesome. Billionaires to the rescue. Daddy Warbucks. Then he showed me a river of the water of life, clear as crystal, coming from the throne of God and of the Lamb. In the middle of its street, on either side of the river, was the tree of life, bearing 12 kinds of fruit, yielding its fruit every month. And the leaves of the tree were for the healing of the nations. There will no longer be any curse, and the throne of God and of the Lamb will be in it, and his bondservants will serve him. They will see his face, and his name will be on their foreheads. And there will no longer be any night, and they will not have need of the light of a lamp nor the light of the sun, because the Lord God will illumine them, and they will reign forever.